One title that Nate did expound on for us was Noisemaker Deluxe, because it sort of hints at Nate Morton drums. And I'm going to play that track, but before I do, we have a listener who has a specific question about it. Mark Herrick listens to us in Tucson, Arizona. And I've been to Mark's house before, and it's very clear what his priorities are. I mean, there's keyboards everywhere. It's the kind of place if you open the kitchen cabinet, instead of finding dishes, you're probably going to find a mini Moog in there, So as an avid keyboard enthusiast, he wants to know about the gear you use, because, you use a variety of sounds and textures and tones, and they all sound really good. And he particularly wanted to know about one of the solo sounds on Noisemaker Deluxe, sort of distorted electric piano sound. Now, is that coming from the keyboard or from the amp?
Thank you, Mark, for the question. Noisemaker Deluxe, it's funny that you said it has the letters NMD, kind of like Nate Morton drums. That's a very cool observation. I didn't think of that when I was titling it, but it was actually, I originally thought that was going to be the title for the album back when it was just going to be a Nate Morton album, Noisemaker Deluxe. Drummers are noisemakers. But yeah, as far as gear and equipment, everything is in the computer, in the box, as they say, as I have a tiny apartment, so I don't have space for a lot of gear. So I have a couple of keyboards that I use as controllers, and then it's all plugins and software and virtual instruments. And some of the stuff just sounds so foolproof. It's really impossible to tell the difference between the virtual software and the real thing sometimes. And for that particular sound, the keyboard solo is, it's not a Rhodes, but it's the A200, which is an old electric keyboard from like the 60s or 70s. And I use one of the special settings on that. And it plays through an amp, and it adds some distortion and a little flanger in there. And it just has this really dirty, cool sound that I just sort of discovered by tweaking the presets. And so, that's what I do. Native Instruments makes that. It's Native Instruments, what is it called? Vintage Keys, I think it's called. And it's got a Rhodes and an A200 and a clavinet. And the sample quality, it's so good. It's so amazing. It sounds just like the real thing, plays like the real thing. And so that's like the heart of my sound is, I use those a lot. And it's all in the computer. It's all software, it's so funny because I used to be an old school guy in terms of, you got to have the real thing, you got to need the real instruments here. But over time, as I realized, okay, I don't have space for all this stuff. And, I checked out more of the software online, and I was like, man, this stuff really sounds amazing. And even the late, great George Duke, he had a comment about the Rhodes, the Native Instruments Rhodes sound, and he said it sounds just like the real thing or something. I was like, okay, if George Duke likes it, then I got to get it.
One thing I thought of when I heard that, I know the exact sound Mark means. It kind of reminded me a little bit about John Lord's sort of distorted organ on Highway Star, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
Well, all this conversation started when we were talking about Noisemaker Deluxe, and I do want to listen to that. And we're definitely due for some more music. So let's go ahead and check that out from Funky Jazzy Stuff. Here are my past and current guests, Nate and Kenwood, with Noisemaker Deluxe. Well, the cool thing about having you come on right after Nate is there were so many tunes that I didn't get to play on his episode. Now we get to hear them. That was a great example. And another thread we need to pick up on from last time is the mysterious vocalist, Lemon Drop Swagga.
He's a friend of mine, a special friend of mine that I discovered one day, and I'm just very happy he's on the album. I'll just leave it at that.
I understand he's a close friend and confidant of the uber funky Malik Shabazz.
I didn't know that until Nate mentioned that, which is hilarious. But he's just part of that go-go sound, go-go music. Anybody who knows that style, like some of the bands they're known for the band themselves, and then some of them have vocalists with that unique kind of sound. And so, Lemon Drop Swagga, he's one of those, he's got a little bootsy in him and just a variety of influences. But, he just came in and stumbled around and I happened to record it. And there it is.
There it is. There it is. Well, I'd mentioned as a joke last time, the astronomical odds that the artist who did your album cover had the same first name and last name as Nate's wife, ha ha. Now, in that case, I was kidding, but now we really do have a sort of long odds situation in that, when I spoke with Nate and I was talking about, drumming and how, he was talking about monster drumming. And I said, well, sometimes on any instrument, what attracts me or gets my attention is just like something subtle that I just haven't seen anybody do before. The example I tossed out off the top of my head was the Led Zeppelin track 4 Sticks.
Yeah.
Right? So imagine my surprise when I went to your website and I found 4 non-album tracks posted there, one of which was your interpretation of 4 Sticks by Led Zeppelin. I go, what were the odds of that? I mean,
That's funny. That wasn't even my idea. That was, I was in a band here in LA back in the 90s, and another friend from Berkeley, she started the band, and she was a singer-songwriter and like amazing musicians. As a matter of fact, there's a bass player named Wes Waymiller who unfortunately passed away years ago, but he has a lot of friends here in LA, and every year they do a tribute concert to him. And he was in the band, way back when. And but it was a singer-songwriter project, and we did a few gigs. And so we did mostly original music, and we did some covers. We did a Clapton thing, and we did 4 Sticks. And I forget whose idea it was. We played it, and I was given a drum solo, and it's one of my better drum solos, I must admit. And it was a lot of fun, and I was nervous and everything. But it was a happy accident. I'm glad somebody had it on tape, and it's on my website, and it's fun to listen to.
I get all that, but and it's you can tell it's a live performance, and as a female vocalist, which isn't a bad idea because Robert Plant sings up high, and female could easily sing those parts. But I'm just saying is that the example I gave out of all the ones I could have pulled out of the air when I talked to Nate, I pulled out 4 Sticks, and there it is sitting on your website, 4 Sticks. So now when you listened to that interview with Nate, did you make that connection when I mentioned that title, or did it fly out?
I laughed because, it's just a strange coincidence, because there's so much. Well, it's cool because so many people, were musicians or fans of music that like a lot of the same stuff. And, Led Zeppelin is a band you cannot ignore. So, people who know the stuff, that's just one of those tunes that a lot of people know, and it was fun. It was fun for me to hear you mention that in the interview with Nate, and it's always fun to just hear references to different stuff that I know too, or I like, as well. It was fun.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of your interests away from music. I'll give you 2 topics to pick from: Star Wars and jury duty.
Let's go with Star Wars. A huge Star Wars fan. I have been my whole life. I saw the first movie back in 1977. I was like 8 years old, I think. Just always been a huge fan. And these recent movies, I love them all. Rogue One and The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. And I've seen them all 4 or 5 times each, and just love them. And it just, brings you back to your childhood. And gives you something new, and it's, like I said earlier, always been a huge movie fan. I like a lot of science fiction. I love Star Trek as well, and a lot, old TV shows and like the Dick Van Dyke Show and all kinds of stuff. And Star Wars is one of those things. It's just it's my happy place.
Well, I bring it up for two reasons. One reason, back over your shoulder, there's 2 Star Wars posters on the wall.
What? How did you know that?
And and also you I saw you post on Facebook. You checked the movie out, and I think it's cool that Star Wars has come back so strong and created a connection to the next generation, to use a Star Trek term, the next generation of fans. I mean, my kids are both into it, and I showed them all the movies. They saw the original 3 and then the middle 3, and they've been going to these. And yeah, I think it's interesting how George Lucas, who created the whole thing, also came super close to like totally ruining it. And it bounced back, but it's so interesting because it's the quality is high. Yeah, everybody has their own personal opinions about they should have done this and they shouldn't have done that, but you have to see that it's not embarrassing like the Star Wars holiday special was. It's like it's big budget, it's impressive. I'm actually a fan of Force Awakens, Last Jedi. Rogue One, not as much as the other 2, but it's okay. But I don't hate it or anything. But it's interesting how they're doing that. They're staggering, the John Boyega and Daisy Ridley and who's the guy who's playing Kylo Ren, Adam Driver.
Yeah.
And then because it takes them a couple years to do those, so it's so unprecedented. In those gaps, they're giving you other little movies. I think it's really cool. But another reason I bring it up is we're Skyping and your little Skype icon is Worf from Star Trek. So,
yes.
There are people out there where it's like Star Trek and Star Wars are either or for them. Like you have to pick a team. And for me, no, I mean, I like things about both of them. And this I will say, and I grew up big into Star Trek, the original series, but I think Star Wars did a much better job rebooting the movies. The Star Trek movies they're okay. They're not bad. But, it's like those, who else can be Kirk but Shatner? Who else can be Spock but Nimoy? Star Wars, they actually had Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher. They didn't recast them. They had the same people, and they've introduced cool new characters. But, that's all good. But, hey, also in the realm of improbable returns, along with Star Wars, who would have ever predicted that in 2016, Pee Wee Herman would make another movie, Pee Wee's Big Holiday? And who could have predicted that the drummer on the soundtrack would be you?
Me. Yeah. Another happy accident. That project was so fun to do. My good friend James T. Sale, he's a film composer and amazing film composer. And he orchestrated and wrote a lot of music on that film, and he was able to hire me to play drums on that on the soundtrack. And it's mostly orchestral. I mean, they went to London to record with the amazing orchestral players in London. I think they did it at Abbey Road, and just amazing players. So it's mostly orchestral, and then there's just a few bits of drum set stuff in there. But it was just totally fun to do. And James called me in, and I was sight reading, which I hadn't done in a while, but it was just fun, so much fun to play along with the orchestra and sort of just the music is really funny in addition to the movie being really funny. And I wasn't the biggest Pee Wee Herman fan back in the day, but when I watched the finished movie, I laughed a lot. It was really, really fun. And I never knew that I would be playing on a Pee Wee Herman movie, but there you go.
Yes, those crazy things happen. But yeah, of course, Danny Elfman did the soundtrack for the first Pee Wee Herman movie, and it was just dun 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 dun, almost like circus music, that really added to it. And then I don't even remember the second one they made; it kind of didn't do too well. And then he had his hit TV show. But when I saw like a movie was coming back, I guess, and we talked about Rogue One, and they sort of resurrected Peter Cushing for that. But what they did with Paul Rubens in the movie that you played on is it was him, but they used some computer effects to de-age him. So he actually looks younger in the movie than he really is. They decided sort of electronically took some wrinkles out and stuff. So I mean, that's what I heard anyway. So you can do.
Wow.
And
I had no idea.
And I watched, I mean, of course, at the time, I had no idea you had any connection to it. And I watched it with my boys because they I think I did show them the first Pee Wee Herman movie. And, it's never, I mean, I saw that movie similar to Back to the Future. I think I was at Lake Tahoe both times, and it was just like, oh, let's go. I heard this Back to the Future movie's okay. Let's go check it out. And of course, this iconic thing, and you leave the theater going, wow. Well, Pee Wee Herman was kind of like that too. I didn't even really know very much about who he was. And it's just like, it's just so silly and just so weird, but also, kind of iconic on its own too. And of course, unfortunately, he sort of had one of those sort of Bill Cosby things too, where something happened in his career that sort of tainted everything he did. But that's why it's so interesting that he came back. And anyways, I mean, it's one of those things, I guess, it's personal taste. Some people didn't like it. Some people did like it. I just remember it wasn't as good as his very first one, of course, but it was, I wasn't regretful at the end of it. I go, oh, why did I watch this? I thought it was pretty funny. In fact, my kids laughed a couple times. I think there was something where he had like a remote control helicopter that like took a toupee off somebody's head or something. It's something like that. Come on. Paul Rubens is you got to give him credit for being a great performer and a great comedian, and he's not going to do an entire movie and just not be funny in it. So
yeah, it was so much fun. It was really, really a lot of fun. And yeah, it's funny. I mean, my career I've had plenty of ups and downs, and then just once in a while, I get to do an interesting gig like that or something that's just completely out of left field. And my teachers and a lot of people always said, be ready for anything. Keep your chops together and just be ready for anything, because anything can happen at any time. So, and that's a great example.
Absolutely. But we've been talking about how times change and technology changes. So now we got this whole social media thing. So I know about the Kenwood Anderson fan page on Facebook. I've checked out your YouTube channel. I know you've got, on your website, you got the icons for Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest. I mean, I'm just getting tired just saying all that. So I mean, social media presence is important, and very often it can be fun, but it can also be a lot of work sometimes. Did I miss any, or did I get them all?
You got them all. And it is a lot of work and it takes a lot of time. And I'm promising to put a lot more content on social media this year, because I'm having fun doing it. And it's just, I have all this stuff like written down, tomorrow on Instagram, post this, but I'm going to be doing a lot more YouTube videos with sort of behind the scenes stuff with Nate and I about the creation of this album, and talking about how I put some tracks together, and just a lot more stuff coming this year. And I always try to put fun stuff on my social media. I mean, even, silly stuff that happens to me, or a lot of times on Instagram, I'll post whatever album I listened to that morning or something, and a favorite album of mine. So, so I'm always just posting little things, and I'm adding stuff to Pinterest because I love a lot of old school things like old movies and Hollywood and stuff like that. And so I'll, put pictures of that stuff there. And so I'm all over the interwebs, and, anybody please follow me and connect with me there.
And of course, best of all, the best resource of all is your official website, which is kenwoodsmusic.com. KENWOODS music.com. And then you can branch off into all the other places we just talked about. And it's a great resource in and of itself. We have one last track to play, but we have two more titles to talk about. Interns from Neptune.
I think that title came near the end of the creation of the track, something because in addition to Nate's drums, there's a little drum loop that's in there that is taken from a loop that he did, and I sort of messed around with it, and it has this weird sort of sound effect in there, and it almost sounded like, it reminded me of like something out of an old science fiction radio show or something from the 40s or something like that. And the aliens from Neptune are coming to get us or something.
Okay.
And like I said before, my brain is crazy, and I think of putting words together that are silly. And so Interns from Neptune, I kind of know what Interns from Neptune look like. They're these little alien creatures. Maybe they'll make an appearance on my social media one day. Who knows?
Cool. Well, my hat's off to you for your skill at however you do it. If it's, matching up column A with column B or just having a moment of inspiration. I mean, and of course with instrumental music, you do have a lot of leeway because you're not bound by any lyrical content. But still, it's important to have some relationship to it. I mean, there's sometimes you hear a piece of music and you go, why is that called, my summer in Montana? It doesn't make me think of that at all. So there's that. Okay, well, I'm glad you clarified that one. But one of the ones I threw at Nate was Shakespearean fruit bats. I mean, come on, Shakespeare and bats. I mean, what's up?
Yeah, I remember like years ago hearing in a movie or something or a TV show, I don't know, something. There's something called fruit bats, in Australia or something like that. I just remember hearing about there isn't a real animal called a fruit bat, and that's just something that always stuck in my head. It's just a funny sounding phrase. And Shakespearean, I don't know. I think I'm a failed Shakespeare fan. There was some Shakespeare that I read in school that I loved, and at some point I thought of putting the word Shakespearean with fruit bats. Just trying to be as silly as possible.
Do you ever watch the epic rap battles of history? Do you know what that is?
I've seen a couple of those, yeah.
There's one with Shakespeare versus Dr. Seuss. I recommend that one. It's awesome.
I have to check that out. It's so hard to explain. Like some of these titles, I can't remember why I came up with that or whatever. But and it's partially Nate's fault too, because Nate is just funny and goofy in a way that kind of stuck in my brain. And like, let me try to, I want to make the song titles fun too. And then all of this stuff happened.
Well, between the music itself and the crazy titles and Nicole's picture that I'm holding up right now, it's a unique project, but anybody can listen to it and tell. I mean, we obviously know Nate's a great musician, but this is an awesome showcase for you too. I'm glad you guys did it, and I'm glad I became aware of it, and I'm glad we've had back-to-back episodes to share it with everybody. I know my listeners, love this type of thing, not only because it's quality, but also because it's, there's so much stuff out there and there's no gatekeeper. And how are you going to weed through the 800 albums and find the 2 or 3 good ones? You know what I mean? So
right.
This is part of the function of the Friends of Dan Music podcast, is to help direct people to the good stuff.
Well, I really appreciate all of your kind words, and I'm glad that you like the album, and I'm glad your listeners are digging it. And I'm so glad I was lucky enough to do this with Nate. It was really a lot of fun, and there's a sequel in the works. We have talked about doing another album, maybe 2. And it was a great challenge for me and him, and it turned out to be just a fun, I can't say enough about it. It was really fun to do.
You guys obviously click well as musicians, and you click well just as people. So I can see you guys collaborating very easily. And it's kind of cool that it is just kind of you guys. I mean, you could have brought a 3rd or 4th or 5th person in. You don't really need it. I mean, it's like you can, like I told Nate, it's like there's a freedom, sort of a quality to it. There's like you said, you guys can bounce back and forth, do this, drop this, add this. And it's fun. I mean, it's fun to listen to. And also for people, some sort of the quote unquote layman who don't really get to hear somebody who drums as well as Nate, or don't get to hear some of, honestly, your music, it reminds me of that period of time when, Stanley Clarke, Rocks, Pebble, Sand, Bob James, and Sanborn, and all that sort of era where people were just putting out great music just for the sake of it. Like they're going like, I'm going to put out this great music just because I can. And then people would there was a market for it. There was a scene for it, And so it's definitely a flashback to it.
Yeah, definitely. That was a huge influence on me. Those artists you mentioned, absolutely. And Chick Corea and, the 70s fusion era and Brecker Brothers and the whole jazz rock thing. That was a huge influence for me creating some of these tunes. And some of it was from ideas that Nate had as well. And, I think we did say, let's do some music that Nate would definitely not be playing on The Voice. Like the stuff he plays on The Voice is obviously, where it's much more groove oriented and it's popular music and stuff. And he's amazing on there, and it's amazing to see what he does with that kind of music. And then he can do this too, where he can stretch out more and create backwards parts and do. So I think we succeeded in that, in saying, let's do something a little different, but not so, well, it is kind of crazy. I don't know. It was just fun.
Well, I remember that era fondly. I mean, and Jeff Beck. And it's funny because when you said the words Chick Corea, his name entered my mind exactly. It's like a jinx. It's like, I was thinking, oh, I should probably mention Chick Corea. And it's just I had that thought, you go, Chick Corea. So anyways, but
Perfect.
yeah.
We're on the same page,
Oh.
I had to mention him because he's, I have so many of his albums. So I just literally grew up listening to him. Yeah, and then just a lot of that stuff came out as I was creating the songs, and a lot of it, hearing Nate's voice in my head and looking at the last email he sent me and what he said about this, and so there was, hearing my own thoughts and hearing Nate's thoughts, putting them together, and it came, through the music. And the icing on the cake was, going to the studio to record Nate's drum tracks and because I had never heard any of his stuff until we got to the studio, and it was I was really happy, because it was like he would play one take and he's like, okay, I want to do another take. I think I can do it better. But I'm already thinking, that was perfect. That was awesome. That was, it was so exciting to hear him add his thing and put, he was sweating back there, putting 100% into it, and just it blew me away.
Well, on behalf of my listeners and myself, I want to thank you for being my guest. I mean, we'll definitely have to do this again.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, this was fun. I would love to come back. And we'll, there'll be more from Nate and I coming this year, especially on YouTube, and more stuff coming.
That sounds great. And to keep ahead of that, everybody, I encourage you to visit Kenwood's website, kenwoodsmusic.com. Find him and friend him on whatever social media you prefer. And of course, with all the guests who come on the show, let's also show our support with our dollar votes. I mean, you can find funky jazzy stuff and Handful of Grooves wherever music is sold. So go get yours today. Once again, I'd like to thank Kenwood Anderson, Nate Morton, and Mark Herrick. Thank you for listening. And now from Funky Jazzy Stuff, here are Nate and Kenwood with Shakespearean fruit bats, of course. Makes perfect sense to me. So long, everybody.